Hi, I'm Sister Simone Campbell. I'm the Executive Director of Network, Lobby for Catholic Social Justice, and leader of Nuns on the Bus. And today we are at the Cass Community Social Service Center in Detroit, Michigan. I am so excited to be here because back in 2018, we got to visit. But now, because of doing this virtually, we get to share this with all of you. So let's welcome our guests who are Reverend Faith Fowler and Stephanie Donaldson. How great to see you both. Thank you so much for welcoming us.
Thanks for coming back. We're delighted to see you.
Well, maybe, Faith, you could just tell us a bit about Cass Community Service and some of the, I mean, you have such comprehensive work going on. If you could give us a thumbnail sketch of what's happening at the center, that'd be great.
Sure. Thank you. Cass Community Social Services grew out of Cass Community United Methodist Church, which really started doing programs during the Great Depression. It set up a soup kitchen for the people who had lost their jobs and lost their houses and obviously were hungry. That has never stopped. So it's our long communion line that goes back several decades. We do 700,000 meals a week, every single week. Some of the food we grow.
Wait. Say that number again.
700,000 meals a year. Yeah. Unless it's the pandemic and then we're doing more, I'll tell later. But so that's where it started, in a small congregation downtown Detroit that wanted to feed its neighbors. Over time, the church added a number of ministries, including work with the mentally ill and homeless and returning citizens. It started 2 free medical clinics and a jobs program. So we do food, housing, healthcare, and jobs. We currently have 80 people in our vocational training program. We have 300 people who stay with us each night, either in emergency shelter, a warming center, a family shelter, rotating shelter, or 150 who are in permanent supportive housing, in addition to the people we have in our tiny home. So the really nice thing recently, in 2002, the church created a separate nonprofit so we could diversify the board and do better at friend and fundraising, as you might expect. But it moved most of its programs up to one area that we now call our campus. And the really wonderful thing about it is anybody who partakes in any of our services or lives in one of our buildings can avail themselves to any other program they need. So if you live in the Scott building, you can walk. It's pedestrian, which is good because poor people don't have cars, and the bus system is a whole nother program. You can walk to a class, you can walk to a AANA group, you can walk to a job, you can walk to a store. All of it's within 4 or 5 blocks. You can borrow a bike, you can borrow a tool, you can be engaged with a counselor or some other sort of social enterprise. And that's intentionally done. So most of the services are offered here, right by where the tiny homes are. We have one facility for homeless men with AIDS on the west side of the city, and we don't give out the location because unfortunately, still there's the stigma and the violence sometimes towards people who are sick. But that's where it started. Our tagline is Cass Community Social Services, fighting poverty, creating opportunity, and building community.
Wow, it's building community that we've found is so critical for really grounding the community and making change. What are some of the ways that you experience community with all this? I mean, it sounds like quite a collection of folks that you've got. It must be a growing.
Yeah, so one of the latest additions to our campus is a park. We bought up some old, deserted, rat-infested, garbage-filled land and cleaned it up and have been adding each summer so that we now have a fire pit, we now have swing sets and community gardens. And so this summer after Chad died, we had a movie night for everybody, and we showed the Black Panther in the park outside where everybody was safe so they could be together. But I love telling people before the movie, we had the kids come down from the shelter and from the neighborhood, and they had never had s'mores before, which just blew my mind. They'd never been to camp before, right? So we picked up sticks and we didn't sanitize them. They threw the marshmallows on and put them in the fire and caught them ablaze and blew them out. And so we had 4 kids in the bunch who ate over 6 s'mores apiece. So they were puking somewhere soon, but they were so happy just to be together, to do something that most of us take for granted, right? So there are opportunities like that we try and make social in nature as well as educational and the rest of it, where they can come together. We, as a matter of fact, the Cass congregation worshiped in the park all summer long because we couldn't be in the church building, and that was rather fun. At the start of the summer, there was this mound of dirt that we hadn't moved yet, and I was so angry because I'm, just anal. And then it dawned on us, well, let's just preach on top of it, and we did. And it was wonderful. You may not know John Wesley, but he preached on his father's grave because they kicked him out of the church. And I thought, oh, I'm just like John Wesley, up high. My dad's not down there, but it was just so nice to keep everybody safe at a time that was very scary here in the city.
Yeah.
And yet to be able to worship God. And that's just because we have this park. Otherwise, I don't know what we would have done.
Oh my gosh, what a gift. And actually, the image that popped in my head was Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, that he's up a little bit talking to everybody. And John Wesley had a good idea for how to do it. So that's great. Well, Stephanie, I understand that you are the coordinator of the program that actually captivated my imagination and made me want to move to Detroit, which is the tiny house program for permanent residents. Can you let our people know about the program and about all the work that you're doing there in the tiny house program?
Absolutely. Tiny Homes has, and I have to say thank you to Reverend Faith Fowler for introducing me to tiny homes and the community, because when you're raised middle class, I'm going to say middle class, when you have a mother and a father, a sister, a house, everybody has a car, you go to school, after school, well, you're going to go to college, and, growing up when you went on summer vacations and all, I really did not know that people were homeless, because I didn't know anybody homeless. I didn't know anybody who lived in an apartment. Everybody had their own home. I didn't know anybody who didn't have a car. So to come to Cass Church and then to be introduced to tiny homes was truly an experience that I would like for all of my friends to come and see. This is what the real world is. When we talk about the president and, children who don't know where their parents are or whatever, it was quite an experience for me to come and see. I think at that time there may have been 10 houses, Reverend Fowler. 10?
Also,
about 10 houses, and it was during the construction time. So it was quite an experience for me, even though having a degree in planning and development, I didn't know planning and development like this. So it was quite to come and see the houses under construction, and to see, I'm going to say 3 years ago, there must have been 100 people every day, all day, that came to see tiny homes. And it was quite an experience for me, even though, as you all know, I love to talk, don't laugh, Reverend Fowler. to see the people come from all around the world, like you did with the bus. And people came. I thought this was going to be, oh, here I am. I'll just show a few houses and that's it. We were overwhelmed with people to come and see the tiny homes in the center of Detroit, a community where a lot of people even in Detroit didn't know existed. So to see, I'm going to say the average house is, and correct me when I'm wrong, Reverend Fowler, I will let you do that. Uh, maybe 300, 400 square feet. And what does that feel like to tell somebody, your house is going to be 300 square feet? We know that by going to college. That's what the dorm is, your dorm room. You had a roommate. You complained. Oh my God, I can't wait until I'm a junior so I can get my own apartment. So I don't have to be in this room with this person. But to think that we have built a community that if you've never owned a home, never, a lot of these people have never lived by themselves. We have seniors. We have a senior woman who has lived with her daughter, who now at maybe 65, 70, has a place that she can call her own. And we have made it really exciting for people who are 70 or for people who are 25 to think that, oh my God, I'm going to have something that I call my own. And you can tell people when we take people on tours, people that grew up like I grew up say, oh my God, you're going to stay here? It's 300 square feet. Where's the bedroom? Is there a basement or something? But people now have the opportunity to own something. The governor has a program now where she's letting people out of prison who've been in prison 50, 60 years. And where are they going to go? So you think about tiny homes, possibly another community where people will go, because we are not your typical housing development. Well, what's your credit score? Is it, is it 700? Is it, we are not, where'd you live before? Where are your references and all that? Ours is because of Reverend Fowler. We interview people and we have a long waiting list. We interview people and we get to know them.
Right.
Because they have to get to know us. Because let me tell you, this community is not for everybody.
Well, before we get into that, Stephanie, maybe we could put up some pictures and then we could talk about what the agreements are, how you build community. But let's first get a visual. We have some visuals from 2 years ago when we were at Cass Community Social Service at the tiny homes. So if we put those up, maybe you can talk about what they are, and people get a feel for it. Because one of the things that struck me was how unique each home is, how really thoughtfully they're created, and the fact that they're each on a lot, on a town lot. So those are the things that I carried away. So Caroline, backstage, can you put up one of these? Oh, here you go. Could you just describe what we see here?
And Reverend Fowler, why don't you do that?
So the notion, there we go. So the notion was that each and every house would be different inside and outside and architecturally pleasing, right? So you're looking at 3 homes that are a row and you can see that they're different. Actually, these 3 are interesting. The yellow house is all on one level with a bedroom in the back and a senior lives there. The reddish house in the middle has a loft so that it's for someone younger out of foster care. And that house has a dog. The dog climbs up in the loft too to go to bed. The blue house on the very end is a studio. So it's just one big room and a bathroom. The original 25 houses were to be between 250 and 400 square feet. And they're each on their own lot. So we're putting houses where houses used to be. There was no need for a zoning variance. And originally we thought we'd build 25. We believe before the end of the year we'll start building our 27th house. So slow but sure it's filling in. Folks rent the houses for 7 years at $1 a square foot. So again, if you live in a 250 square foot house, you pay $250 a month. Your only other bill is electric, but we've set up each house so it has its own solar array. Even though the entire house is electric, so your appliances and your lights and your other things that you would plug in, your bill in the summer is about $20, and that's only because you have a connection with the utility company. In the winter time, we don't get enough sun in Michigan, and people are running the heat nonstop in the colder months, that you're not going to eliminate your bill so much as reduce it by about $40 to $50. So we thought that was a good deal. During the 7 years, though, it really is a program. It's not just a rental situation. During the 7 years, the tenants, who, as I mentioned, are senior citizens, folks who've come out of prison, young adults who've come out of foster care, or senior citizens, all who make between $7,000 and $15,000 a year. So they're poor. They have an income, enough to get by, but never enough to get ahead, and never enough to qualify for a mortgage, not even a Habitat mortgage. And Habitat does great work. I'm not saying that, but our folks can't get accepted. So they're sort of our target, if you will. During the 7 years, in addition to paying rent, they come to a once a month homeowners meeting where they talk about issues they're having with the houses. When's it time to clean the gutters? When do I turn off the outside spigot? How do I fix that chain in my toilet without calling a plumber for $75 an hour? You know, all those things you've learned over time if you've owned a house, but you've never learned if you've had a landlord. They teach each other. So it's not like a classroom per se, but it's a community sharing. Then once a month, each tenant works with a financial coach. It's done privately because nobody wants to talk about money publicly. But do you have debt? Do you have a budget? Do you have a bank account? Can you earn more money? And that last question is the most important question in terms of people coming out of affordable housing. Normally, if you earn more money, your rent goes up. And if you earn too much more money, you have to get out, right? Which is not the American dream. And between you and me, I've had raises over the year. Never has my rent gone up if I had a raise at work. Ours is based on square footage, so they don't have that problem. But once the work with the financial coach is going well, and these things are starting to be put in place, then the coach comes back and says, can you earn more money? And have you ever had money make money for you? And they haven't, because they've never had extra money. So even if you start to walk a dog, or you babysit, or you do nails, or you do hair, or you do not a 40-hour week job somewhere, but if you're living on 10 grand a year, an extra $50 a month is something. Now, when the coach says, have you had money make money for you? We're not looking for them to put up all their money. But what about a savings bond? What about a reliable stock? So that they see money can make interest and compound, and so when they have the house in 7 years, they have a financial cushion, because once you own the house and the refrigerator dies, you're going to have to fix it, right? The last thing is, like Habitat, we like the idea of sweat equity. It's just I wasn't so sold on the build your own house model, just because I never want to live in a house that I've built. I just don't. It's like I don't want to eat a meal that I've cooked. At any rate, so once a month they have to volunteer 8 hours together, usually, for the larger community. So boarding up houses, painting up houses, they're going to do the trunk or treat for the little kids. So that not only do they get to know each other, but they get to know the people in the neighborhood beyond. And they become seen as the asset. And that, by the way, is the key to this project. Everybody comes because they're cute, right? Or they're an environmentalist and they're great for the planet. I'd like to have a planet here for the next generations. For me, the biggest thing is that asset. It's the beginning of wealth. It's the house is what we use as our piggy bank in this country if we're middle class or upper class. But if you're poor, you're never allowed in because you can't get the money to buy a house. But if you have an asset like a house, remember they moved in not even with a bicycle. If you have an asset in 7 years, now you can sell it and get something else. You can use it as an asset for collateral at the bank. All of a sudden you can get a loan where financial institutions have never talked to you before. But even beyond that, you can leave it to someone you love, maybe your children, maybe your grandchildren, so that generationally you're dealing with poverty, right? You're giving that springboard that, again, those of us in the middle class or upper class have had whenever our parents have died. Poor people don't have that. They have the problem of raising the money to cremate their loved one because the morgue isn't going to work with them, or the funeral home isn't going to set up a service until they have all the money. So
Wow.
that's what the house fee. It's economic mobility. I can't raise the minimum wage for the entire country. I can, with the help of Stephanie and donors, right, and builders and other good folks, I can make sure that 40 families don't have to be poor anymore.
Which is fantastic, which is a significant step. And one of the things we've worked on at Network is finding the structural causes of this income and wealth gap in our nation. Some of it's racial, some of it is just economic class, but regardless, it's structural and people get locked in generation to generation. And I think that for me was one of the geniuses. I give you, the homes are cute. I love the homes, but the concept that we can shift the multi-generational story, I think is really huge. And that's the important model about going forward, is to look at that. I'm curious now though, so you've got 25 houses, 26 houses now, is that right?
We have 20, not all of them are completely done, but we're nearing that point. And as I say, we'll start 7 more. I just, if you don't mind, I'd like to follow up on what you just said. I listened to Stephen Henderson, who's a local celebrity here in Detroit, speak at a conference the other night, and he talked about the GI Bill and what it meant to the veterans returning home after the Second World War, and that they could get an education, they could buy a house, they could buy a house in the suburbs, by the way, and most white people did, but that his dad came back from the Second World War, and he's African American, and his dad couldn't. Right? So he's locked out of the education, he was locked out of the housing, and then we certainly know about redlining and banks, right? And real estate agents. So for generations, many people who are poor and or minority couldn't have the American dream. So I really do see it as being a systemic solution that can be replicated. It is not the only solution. I'm not claiming that. But I do think we have to look at solutions that deal with systemic problems. And housing has been huge in Detroit. When you look at the numbers, 37% of Detroiters pay more than half of their income per household for rent. Well, how the hell do you ever get ahead? What happens when you have something go wrong? 58% pay more than 30% of their income, which, by the way, is you shouldn't pay more than that. You should try not to pay that. Over half the city now is a renter. Again, how do you get ahead without some help? That's what the GI Bill was. That was a chance to lift a whole bunch of people into the middle class, but only some people. So now we should start asking, how do we let all people do better?
Amen.
Have a good life.
And one of the things we've studied at Network is the GI Bill, but the structural racism that's built into our laws that look perfectly fine on their face. But it includes everything from well, obviously slavery, but after the Civil War, the fact that Congress voted to pay the former plantation owners for their lost property when the slaves were freed, but they never paid the former slaves for their lost labor. I mean, it's that intersection, layered upon layer upon layer, or like the labor laws don't apply, historically don't apply to agricultural workers or domestics, because they were traditionally held by African Americans or minorities, the Latinx community. And so that exclusion from those protections then left them out of increasing wages. And that's in the 30s. I mean, it just goes on and on. And they look perfectly fine on the face, but the way, who's excluded, becomes the critical question. And I think that some of the genius of Cass Community Social Services is that your effort to see beyond those limitations and to do creative work to engage folks in education as well as in home ownership, learning, to manage finances, all of that. It is really critically important. So, Stephanie, maybe I can go back to you, and can you talk a bit about the community that's being formed there? Some of the pieces we heard about, the Reverend Fowler standing on the little mound and preaching. I love that image. It's so cool. But I'm curious, and s'mores, one of my favorite childhood foods. So
Me too.
I'm curious, can you talk about some of the facilitating the community, some of the things that you get to do in working with folks in the homes?
Let me tell you how exciting this is. Imagine someone giving you a house, first of all, making it available to you, not giving it to you, but making it available to you. And you say you can move in tomorrow. And you think about it, well, the way I would think about it, oh my, I have to go buy furniture. I have to, what am I going to do? I live with my mother and all. And you take the person to the house and you say, this is the house, not that has been chosen for you, but one that we feel fits your income and fits you. And you take them in to the house and they cry and they say, oh my God, look at this furniture. So is this a model home? No, this is your home. Look at, does it have this wash machine and dryer comes with it? Yes, it does. I don't have to go to the laundromat anymore? No, this is your laundromat. We have companies that have adopted a home and have said, we will make this home their home. How many times have you heard anybody say, I moved into the house, it has washer, dryer, it has a stove, refrigerator, it has, plates, small things like a set of dishes, pots and pans, everything that you can possibly imagine going into a home, a television. And you're like, oh my God, are they going to take the TV? No, this is your big screen TV. Really? We have people that have, and with the houses come sheets and blankets and lamps and drapes for the windows and all. And for a person, we have people that are maybe 25 and 70. So in between that, you have the reaction of the person who's 25, who has lived in shelters, who really has no clue. And they're like, oh my God, is this mine? And then you open the drawer and there's the flatware. And they said, well, are you going to take this? No, this is yours. And then we have some companies, they put food in the refrigerator. They put food in the cabinets and all. Where else in the world can you find something that has been created by Reverend Fowler to say, this is yours? So when we take people on tours, I always say, and here's your envelope. And I expect that check in the mail next week.
Right. Okay, audience, pay attention. Watch the runner thing at the bottom. Pay attention. Pay attention. Okay, good deal. Everybody can help, right?
Everybody can help. $5, $10. We do have fundraisers throughout the year. We do have corporate fundraisers. But I tell you, we have somebody who's real special called Faith Fowler, Reverend Faith Fowler.
Okay, we're going to embarrass her. I could tell this already. She's a good thing she's muted.
That's enough. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you very much. Go to the next question.
No, but you know what? I think the thing to point out, though, is for me, what I've learned doing Nuns on the Bus is when we say thank you to each other, like, I want to say thank you to you, Stephanie, for being able to point out the reactions. And I say, thank you for Reverend Faith Fowler for her imagination. And thank you to all the people we meet. But they always say thank you back to us. Oh, no, thank you for coming. Thank you for lifting this up. To me, what the important thing of that is it shows we see each other as gift. And that's the sign of community. That's how we know we're connected. And while my heart brims with gratitude for the two of you and for your whole staff and program, it is the community that can sustain us. And I think in a time of hyper individualism, where too often we say people are on their own, they have to just figure out their own way. How many times have I heard, pull yourself up by your bootstraps? I'm sorry, I'm barefoot, please. So the challenge, I think, of the countercultural story is community can make a difference. And there's imagination everywhere if we come together, put our minds to it, and see what's missing for people. That's the important part. So I see what you're doing, but but giving tours opens people's eyes, just the way your eyes were opened, Stephanie, and how important that is to see something more. And I just want to say that before COVID, in February, I was in Detroit for a meeting, and we went to a mosque that's not too far from where Cass Community Center is, and services is. And I asked the imam if they knew you, and because I've talked about you all over the country. So he said, oh, of course we do. Of course we do. They're so important in our community. They make all the difference. And I thought, isn't that the way? That good people know good people, and you connect across boundaries and across lines.
We're just starting to talk to them. They have a nonprofit called Dream Detroit. They're doing really good stuff at the other end of Woodrow Wilson, which is our major thoroughfare. And we're imagining creating what we're calling the Green Mile, where we'll take the empty lots along Woodrow Wilson and create businesses and shops and stores, but more than that, amenities for the people of the neighborhood and jobs for this neighborhood. Again, so they can walk. The very first thing to go up is a car wash that will go up in the spring. And next to it, we're looking at a small store, but all of them, we're working hard at solar and geothermal and composting toilets and all the rest to continue to communicate stewardship of the earth, but the need for jobs in the city, in this neighborhood, right? So we know them well, and they do good ministry.
That's great. I love how go ahead, Stephanie.
Can I say this? Just to tell you what kind of community we have. There's a gentleman, he lives, obviously he lives by himself. I'm going to say he's 65 years old, maybe 60. And his first summer in the home, I said to him, we're going to put some plants on your porch, and you're going to take care of these plants. And he said, where are we going to get the plants from? Where are we going to get the pots from? And I took him to Home Depot. And we bought, I'm going to say, 10, 15 plants and pots. And this is not a man who you would ever think was going to come out of his house and water the plants. He told everybody, look what she did. Look what she did. She put these. So that encouraged the other neighbors to go and get plants and plant them. And he was so excited. That was during the time when he could give me a hug and say thank you. But just to show you what kind of community we have. So you come with nothing, and now you have plants on your front porch.
Wow, that's so exciting. I have to confess, I have a peace plant that I brought home from the office because we're all working from home, and the poor thing, it never bloomed. I now have 6 blooms on it, and I think it's because I'm always talking to it. I don't have anybody else around. So I think that's encouraging it. So great
Nice.
story, great story.
Yeah.
Well, but maybe we should touch on how has COVID impacted you all? I mean, you're such a community of service and engagement. How has this played out for you?
Well, I'm willing to answer, or you could answer too, Stephanie. Would you prefer?
No, you answer.
Okay. So we were hit early on after New York. Michigan was infected at a tremendous rate, and Detroit in particular. One of the reasons is poor people were very vulnerable. Most of them are working as essential workers. They don't have the luxury of working from home, even though everybody's peace plant should bloom. Many had compromised health because they don't have adequate health care, and that's a whole nother program, but you get it. In terms of CAS, several things happened to us initially that have impacted our life since then. One is our governor, God bless her, began shutting things down to try and protect people, and now has been threatened and in the news. But it meant we had to shut down a couple of our programs. The one for developmentally disabled adults. We have 130 developmentally disabled adults who come every day that I thought were needed to stop, even in very small groups. And then our green industries, we primarily shut down because many of those people also have health concerns. But then how do you protect the homeless? Some of it, we rely on 7,000 volunteers a year. In March, we were expecting 13 college groups for spring break, and they all canceled. And then our rotating shelter churches canceled. And then our summer groups all canceled. So we went from thousands of volunteers to zero. That was a big change. We then shut down people coming into the shelter at all to try and keep them safe. 150 of our homeless people are in what we call congregate settings, meaning 50 people sleep in one room, 50 people use one bathroom, 150 people use one lunchroom, and we couldn't socially distance them. So we were very, very careful in terms of who we could let in. We, over the course of 7 months, have only had one person get it in our shelter situation, which is a miracle. Now, I wish I could say the same for our staff. Some had to go home just because of their health, but others because they got it and needed to quarantine. We had 2 of our board members quarantined, one hospitalized, the other, her husband, was hospitalized. We've had 6 people in our permanent supportive housing come down with it, a couple hospitalized. No one died. We had plenty of people on staff who had relatives die. Our HR director, his mother died. Our housing director, her sister died. I mean, I could go right down the list. A few weeks ago, there was an organized on Belle Isle, which is a city park run by the state right now, that put up large pictures of people who have died in the city during the pandemic, and there were over 1,000. And the very first picture you saw was one of our seniors from the activity center who volunteered there. But we knew so many faces. I tell people it's almost like post-traumatic stress, because you had all these folks, who were scared, many of whom were sick and scared. You had people who had relatives and loved ones in hospitals you couldn't see, nursing homes you couldn't see. You're saying goodbye, like we're saying, imagine saying goodbye to your mother this way, right? Then we have an outreach team. Their whole job is to go out and find people still living on the streets and to try and encourage them to come in, and during the pandemic to try and encourage them to get tested. They've been quarantined twice because they've taken people who were infected. Our house for homeless men with AIDS had a case. We had to send everybody for testing, and it was very explosive. The other big problem, well, two problems. One is the school shut down like so many other places. But imagine you've got 50 to 60 homeless kids who are sent home to do school online, none of whom own a computer. And we don't have internet for 50 kids to be on computers. So eventually the philanthropic community got together with the school board and provided laptops, but certainly not for a long time. And homeless families come in and out. And so as it became apparent that we were going to continue having kids without computers, we set up a computer room for just 3 at a time. We're working on trying to buy another building that will allow us to socially distance the family, so that even though I can't give you a private bathroom, I could put a family in a room with a door. So there's dignity and safety, and we don't have it as a done deal, but we're working on it. And it's become a passion of ours right now to try and keep people safe. The other thing, and I'm sorry I'm so long-winded, but so much has happened, is food. We continue to serve food. We continue to serve the neighborhood. The people couldn't come in the building, so we're serving them at the door and serving the people inside. But what became apparent early on is that folks were having to stay home who had diabetes and heart disease and other serious diseases. They couldn't be out in public and didn't have transportation to go get anything. And we had lots of people who were being quarantined who couldn't get out because they lived alone and didn't have cars. So we started a mobile free grocery delivery service in March, and it hasn't stopped, and we're doing 200 to 300 families a week. And it just, people have been really good about supplying us with foods, even restaurants with meats and stuff. Some we've had to buy, some we've grown ourselves, but you sure don't want somebody to starve trying to be safe. And that's been the reality here. The other thing Stephanie was just telling me before we came on the program, the school board has identified 4,000 students they don't know. They're not on school online, and they're not in school in person. And so some families, I suspect, have just given up, and the cable company's having trouble installing cable in some of the older, we have old housing stock in the city. Detroit's a city of individual homes. The unions were good to people, allowed people decent jobs, decent wages. Everybody, we're not like Chicago, we're not like New York. Everybody had a house and a yard, but they're old now. And if you don't have much money, they're not in good repair, right? Even if you want them to be. And so just trying to get cable to the kids so they can be online has been, you know, I like to say that this has been a really good thing in that it's exposed the differences and the challenges that have been there all along. I mean, they shut schools and nobody even thought, well, what about the kids who don't have computers? I worried about the families who have 5 kids and parents are working at home and they're expected to use the family computer. But if you're in a family with no computer and no electricity and no Wi-Fi and no place to go, I mean, the libraries are closed, everything's closed. But the reality is, nobody was thinking about that. Nobody was thinking about, well, if you close the schools, they don't get the free lunch, right? Yeah. I mean, we can't ignore that anymore. And I like to say, you can't ignore essential workers anymore. You know, and yes, in the hospitals, but postal carriers and grocery store workers and all these people who put their lives on the line so that the rest of us would live. And so maybe it's time to look again at what is a minimum wage and what's the living wage and what's the right thing to do.
And how we're all connected, because as you were talking, it reminded me early on in the pandemic, we got a call from a woman we met on one of our rural roundtables, and she was in tears. She's a dairy farmer. She was having to dump her milk because the supply chain couldn't adapt fast enough.
There's not a system. You either sell to restaurants or you sell to grocery stores, and we couldn't make the switch fast enough. And so lots of farmers who wanted to help, really wanted to help, they don't want to throw away food. That's not why they do that business. But
this dairy farmer, her story was her milk had gone to schools and were all in those small little cartons, and how children got milk at school, this key element of nutrition, is gone. And she was so worried about the impact on kids, but she didn't have any mechanism for getting to them.
Right.
So I think you're right. And seeing the holes, seeing the rips in our fabric as a society has got to wake us up to the bigger story. And it goes back to trying to build your community. I mean, I want you standing on a slightly higher hill, Faith, so that you can preach to everything. What do you think?
I don't know about that, but it is sort of fun. You feel like king of the mountain or queen of the mountain or something, you know, like you won the game against your brothers. But you could see everybody and they're safe. You could even sing if you wanted to. You know, that's the thing I'm missing the most, is you don't get to sing. I'm not a good singer, but I like to sing. And on Sunday morning, you know?
Yeah.
We
have a new tradition that we're doing now is on Zoom when we have birthdays, we sing happy birthday. It's the most awful sound ever. But it's the most important connection of community. Mm-hmm. So I think we're trying to even sound worse every time we do it. But you're absolutely right. That sense of harmony and connection and doing something beautiful together.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's what we need. It's what we need. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you know, we do policy in DC. We're sort of at the national level, and you all are one of the best examples of innovation, creativity, and building up the dignity of all your people in such a great comprehensive way. I'm wondering, do you have ideas, suggestions, things we should be aware of as advocates that could make a difference more broadly, other than cloning the two of you and multiplying you across the country? I keep looking for ways to give to support people in this moment. Any ideas?
How to support people? You know, I would like to talk to people who were raised like me and say to them, I have a girlfriend whose son is going to work here. He is from a very upper middle class family. But I want him to work in the shelter. I want him to know that life is not great for everybody. And when you get that job, I want you to remember Cass Community. And I want you to take $5, $10 after you get that job. And remember that little girl or little boy who came up to you and said, hi, what's your name? And you turn around and tell them your name. And you remember this experience forever. If we could tell people out here who, it used to be important for me, and don't laugh, Reverend Fowler, it used to be important for me to buy a new coat in the winter, especially if you've had one that was burned up, taking care of tiny homes when we had a fire. No, not a fire. We were trying to keep warm, and my coat caught fire. But isn't it? I looked at the coat yesterday. I started to wear it today. But what's important now We have all stayed in the house for 7, 8 months without wearing these new coats and shoes and hats and everything. We've learned how to cook. We've learned how to bake. And if I could tell people, go to the shelter, visit the shelter, or if you don't want to visit the shelter, go online and see Cass Community Social Services and see what you can do, what that $5 or $10 can do to help someone who has nothing.
Amen. And I just want to say that you and Pope Francis agree, because what Pope Francis just wrote in his letter to the world was advocating a politics of encounter where we meet each other and see each other's realities and let our hearts be changed by it.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Okay, Reverend Fowler, do you have some?
I would never add to what Stephanie had to say. I'm just not that bright, but I would say in terms of policy that the wages matter, right? That you shouldn't work, and King says you shouldn't work a full-time job and be poor.
Amen.
And yet people are. I would say, as much as I believe in the ACA, Obamacare, that it's not affordable for people, and so they aren't included, and they get sicker, and in the long run it's bad for them and bad for all of us. I would say, if you push Stephanie, she'd talk about the need for senior housing, that there's not enough housing for poor seniors in particular. You've got to remember that a third of the city of Detroit, a third of the households in the city of Detroit live on less than $15,000 a year.
Whoa.
Yeah, so if I could build 5,000 houses, it wouldn't be enough. And that's where you need the government with the big things to make big investments, right? So that's where I'm most concerned is healthcare and wages, jobs and wages, and housing. That you're never going to amount to much without a roof over your head that keeps you dry and keeps you warm and allows you to be safe against this world of ours.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for that. We really appreciate your insights, your stories. But most of all, I think what I appreciate is an element of joy and community. That sense that together there can be parties, there can be s'mores, there can be gatherings. And doesn't that lighten all of our lives in this challenging time? To know that joy still exists, even if it's slightly socially distanced, and that we can be of service to each other. That's fabulous. So let me thank you for allowing us to come and visit. I look forward to the third visit when we could come back and maybe do it in person again. But it's just really been a treat. You all are really special. Any last words you want to add?
Best of luck to you. We are in love with your Pope. I was telling your crew beforehand, it almost makes me want to convert. He's always doing and saying things that make me proud to have him as a brother. So good for you and good for the Catholic Church.
Oh, amen. We need the stirring up. Thank heavens the Holy Spirit's alive and well and making mischief. I love it. Stephanie, any last word from you?
I just want to say thank you for inviting us to be a part of this wonderful, wonderful, was it podcast or Zoom or it is wonderful. And if you ever want to invite us back again, we are available.
I love it. I love it. Okay.
Take care.
Thank you all so much. And we'll see you again on Nuns on the Bus, hopefully in person.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye.